All right, I've got 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting for June 12th, 2014 of the Plan Commission to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk Nicholas, could you please call the roll?
Kim Miller is absent. Bob Flanagan. Al White. Dan Buchholz.
Here.
John Merrick.
Present.
Bob Stigler.
Here.
Brian Fisher.
Here. Madam Clerk, have we met all of the requirements of the open meetings law?
Yes, we have.
And we'll start with citizens' comments. Anybody? Going once? Going twice? We'll move on to discussion and possible action on the certified survey for owner applicant Kevin Shimolewski and Dan Buchholz, Lot 1, CSM number 10623. Tax key number is 14059988016. And we're looking for a recommendation to the town board. Planner Ray Barczyk.
I'll excuse myself for commission,
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight you have a staff report and a packet in front of you. Both Chris and I will kind of go back and forth in doing the overview for the Planning Commission. The petitioner is looking to redivide Lot 1 and 2 of Certified Survey Map 10623. The proposal is to extend the temporary Gruner Drive cul-de-sac onto the property to allow for a land division. And in doing so, he's extending Gruner Drive by roughly about 160 feet. And what he's doing is by extending the cul-de-sac east, he's actually creating two separate lots. So he's going to have Lot 1 and Lot 2. Lot 1 is going to be, Lot 2 is going to be 1 acre. Lot 1 is going to be the 18.74 acres. The cul-de-sac will be extended far enough to access Lot 3, which will be Mr. Buchholz's property. The extension of Gruner Drive is following the dedication that was part of the original CSM. So he is following the kind of the future road path for Gruner Drive and Cartwright Circle. As part of the packet, you also see a conceptual development plan. As part of the original CSM, there was a PUD, a plan unit development conditional use approved for this property that allowed for up to 10 lots. 4 lots are dedicated to the petitioner. The other 6 lots are dedicated to Mr. Buchholz. So you can see that 10, 15, 20 years down the road, if the road continues all the way through to Cartwright Court, you can kind of get a sense as to how the 10 lots may be divided. Just from the planning standpoint, I had identified I had two comments in looking at all the material. One is that on the first page of the CSM where we talk about, it's on page 3, where we talk about the density of the lots. I would like to see reference to the actual residential CU document as to how that calculation was done. We did find it in the town's records in its document 3613089. And then also, as staff looked over it, we did also come to the determination that if the petitioner ever wanted to do the 2 additional lots that he's allowed, which on the conceptual development plan is lots 9 and 10, the only way he could do that is when Mr. Buchholz, the owner to the south, actually would put in the road. So to a certain extent, Mr. Buchholz has veto power over those future lots of Mr. Chmielewski, because the remaining 66 feet of reservation is going to be transferred over to Mr. Bukos as part of this CSM. So I think that at least a notation on the CSM should be made aware at this point. With regard to the survey and engineering comments, I'll hand it over to Chris if there's anything that he wants to elaborate on.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. We have, as obviously as part of this development, there's the CSM that we had to review. We had some comments, technical comments and concerns, which are part of our May 15th letter. Won't necessarily go through all of those technical items one by one. Since my May 15th letter was written, the applicant has resubmitted a revised CSM yesterday or Tuesday. Have not had a chance to review that, obviously, but certainly we'll go through those documents and make sure that these items have been addressed, and we would, as part of Jamie's planner report, part of our recommendation of approval is that he address these items in our May 15th letter. Same goes true for the developers agreement. Staff and Kevin have reviewed the developers agreement, which I don't think is part of your packet at this stage, simply because many of the exhibits that will be added to said developers agreement are still kind of in flux. CSM, the plans, some of the approvals and things of that nature. The letter of credit also was reviewed. I had a recommendation also dated May 15th, which spells out the letter of credit amount. So with those three items in mind, those are pretty much the, well, with regards to the construction plans, again, we had a review, I think dated May 15th, in which we reviewed the construction plans that you have before you. We had some additional comments on those items as well. The applicant's engineer has responded to those comments, again, in plans that were received by me on Tuesday, which I have yet to review. So I think we're getting pretty close. I have not reviewed the revisions that we requested in my May 15th recommendations, but we would, again, recommend approval of the plans, letter of credit, developer's agreement, and the CSM based on the comments in my May 15th letters.
Anything further, Planner Ray Barton? Is Mr. Chmielewski in the audience? You want to come on up?
My name is Kevin Chmielewski, 3055 South 48th Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53219.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, you've done an incredible amount of work. I mean, this is a huge project to undertake, and you should be complimented for that. But we do have to talk a little bit about this. First, the Plan Commission and the Town Board did an excellent job, in my opinion, when they first set out this whole thing, because although it took a while for your new staff to figure it all out, all of the documentation is there of what you intended and what was supposed to happen and things like that. So there was a lot of homework done to get to this point before you even got on the picture here. I want to make sure that we do as good a job to set forth what's going to happen in the future that you guys all did previously when you laid the groundwork for this to occur. Okay, I don't want problems down the road or unanswered questions. So that's the first thing. We want all of your eyes on this thing to see, are the notes right, does it make sense, things like that. So if there's anything that jumped out at you that might be confusing for the plan commissioners, or the second point that the planner brought up is a very important point. The way it was laid out was whoever came in first and wanted a lot had to build the road. And you came in and asked properly, and the board changed that, which they had the right to do. But now we're in changing that, they're turning everything over to the other property owner, and he will have total control if there's any more development out there. And you need to know that. We could do it differently. We could try to do it differently. We could have either built the road all the way, or built the road longer, or things like that. So we just need to make sure that that's well documented. I don't like it, and that's not the way you did it the first time. The way you did it first time is the road doesn't have to be built, but whoever's there first has to build the road to everybody's, to both parties' advantage, okay? The way it's being set up now is that you won't get those 2 lots unless Mr. Buchholz decides, or his predecessor entitled, decides to build that. So you understand that?
Yep.
Okay, because we will have no control other than condemnation, which is not something a town board is gonna do, to condemn that right away and take it away from Mr. Buchholz and build the road and charge you and anything to get those other 2 lots. So we just have to, as your planner has indicated, make that very clear in the record. And you understand it, and that's fine, but I just worry 10 years from now, someone's gonna come in who bought from you, or 20 years from now, and said, now I want those 2 lots, and we say, that's not the way it was set up back in 2014. And that's not a problem. I mean, none of this is a problem as long as we have a good record as to what we're doing here tonight, and everybody understands the consequences of how we're doing it. Does that make sense? You know? I just want to do as good a job as we did as you all did last time, you know, with your prior staff, your prior board members. You were here, so you all know what you did and how much work you did to make it happen last time. But under this scenario, because he didn't build it all, we're now turning over all of the control, as planner put it, veto power over any future development to whoever owns the property itself. Again, it's not neither bad nor good. I mean, many properties can't develop unless the adjoining property develops. You know, they have to wait till somebody else develops. But I just want to know if any of you had any issues or any notes that you need to have changed. I mean, your staff, any approval tonight was subject to the staff putting it in final form. But if the property to the south, whoever owns it, doesn't want any more neighbors, there won't be any more neighbors. Now, they won't divide either. You know, they have the ultimate decision to divide. If they want to divide and get their 6 lots, they got to build the road. That'll be crystal clear. They don't get their lots unless there's a road either. So, right, gentlemen, that's the way it's written. Is Mr. Buchholz understands that too, or his predecessor?
Quick question, Mr. Chairman, and I guess I'll push this to Attorney Macy. Is there anything improper about asking Dan Buchholz, the property owner, and not Dan Buchholz, the plan commissioner, to speak to the commission at this point in time?
Oh, no, we put him on the agenda because we were told that he wants to speak on this matter.
Okay.
And so, he's a signer on the certified survey map.
Sure.
He's a co-applicant, albeit, you know, this gentleman, is, you know, picking up the probably all the costs, but in order to make this work, Mr. Buchholz has to cooperate. He asked to speak, and the clerk asked me how we do it, so we just
Okay.
listed him on the agenda. He's a co-applicant, and he has the right to speak. Does you want him to speak now? We could have Mr. Chmielewski step down, and Mr. Buchholz can come.
Whatever, I'm comfortable with anything.
Why don't you have a seat, and we'll call you back up with any questions.
Kevin has followed what you asked him to do. He's put together a decent plan. I have a few concerns on planner Wycheck's review. He's got that we need approval from the city of Muskego in here several times. I'm not sure why we need Muskego involved in this.
I was going based on the CSM that was submitted. It appeared that the city of Muskego has extraterritorial review.
I wouldn't say Muskego, probably the city of Waukesha or the village of Big
Oh,
Bend,
you know what,
and
it
maybe
might have-
New Berlin, but not anywhere near Muskego.
Yeah, but it is a typo. It's, yeah, it should be city of Waukesha.
My bigger concerns, though, is that the drainage easements that have been deemed to the town need to be maintained and need to be addressed, as well as the drainage off the cul-de-sac that was being built. According to the drawings, Gruner Drive does come down to the end of the cul-de-sac. It has since it was built. Originally, Gruner Drive drained right off the end of the cul-de-sac into the field, and that's how the north-south drainage easement came about off of Gruner Drive between the Gruner development and my property, because that water coming off the end of the cul-de-sac flooded the field, making access into the field impossible. It flooded to the point where it was completely saturated all the time. So that drainage easement, we need to leave that, move the water on down to
east-west drainage ditch that is further north on the property. Now the new cul-de-sac's going to be extended. They are going to put a culvert under the road to maintain that drainage easement, but the rest of the cul-de-sac's going to drain directly out now to the northeast into that piece of property. And according to Kevin's plan layout for his home is going to be built just north of that. That's going to create a block, and water coming off the end of the cul-de-sac is going to sit there. There's no place for it to go. We're going to create another wet spot and another issue of drainage. The cul-de-sac should be graded so that the water flow goes around the cul-de-sac and goes off to the north completely, and try and take advantage of that north-south drainage easement. That was the purpose of it. And I think that could be accomplished. It's so flat there that I think that could be accomplished with proper grade studies. That brings us to the north-south drainage easement. The drainage easement has been intimidated and encroached upon by one of the neighbors who has their horse pasture fence right down the middle of the drainage ditch. They haven't maintained it, it's not mowed, water can't flow there. So that's going to have to get maintained. The fence is supposed to be outside of the drainage easement, there's not supposed to be any structures in that easement. That ditch also isn't graded all the way to the east-west drainage ditch that was granted to the town years ago before that. That entire drainage system needs to be maintained, or we're gonna just end up with a bigger problem. The wetlands is already creeping south. If you look on the air photo from the tree line that's north of where Kevin wants to build his house, you can see that the tall grass is creeping further and further out. There's probably about 150 feet, 200 feet of grass away from that tree line. Up to 5 years ago, we were able to farm right up to that tree line. No issues whatsoever, it was dry ground. Since that time, we've put Cartwright Circle down into there, we're dumping water from there into there, all of Bruner Drive goes in there. The folks off of the other side of Oakdale, the west side of Oakdale, from the Woodville subdivision, all that water gets drained down to that same area. The unfortunate part is that east-west drainage ditch doesn't go anywhere. When you go to the east, many years ago, the landowner to the east got upset with Mr. Stiza, who was putting the development on the north side of Oakdale Road, and he filled the ditch in. And nobody ever made him dig it out properly and set the grades again so the water flows. If you go east of that property, there's no water in the ditch because it doesn't go uphill. It's been filled in. Aside from them filling it in, property owner to the east pastures his horse right in the drainage ditch. The horses trample the sides of the ditch down, fill the ditch in again. Those ditches have to be maintained or we're gonna have a bigger issue. Kevin's gonna end up with a failed septic system and a wet basement, as well as the other homes down on the north end of the Bruner Drive. They're gonna end up with failed septic systems and wet basements because the water's gonna be creeping up to their house.
Can you maybe ask a question and kind of pass this to Engineer Janelli and Planner Varchek? I mean, the concerns that Mr. Buchholz has expressed here, at least appear to be on first blush level, those are construction-related things. I mean, this is on the agenda tonight as the consideration, possible action on a certified survey map. Just for the sake of discussion, assuming that the Planning Commission, the Town Board are disposed to move ahead with that or approve that, will there be additional requirements for construction drawings of the cul-de-sac area and drainage and that type of thing? Is that to come, or is that not a requirement in this instance, or how and when can those things be addressed?
Well, I guess maybe I look for some direction perhaps. The easements in question, the drainage easements that Dan's talking about are town easements. So presumably the town is required to, maintain those. So to ask Kevin to grade them when he's not, planning to do that work is probably not realistic. There's lots of questions that I have about the drainage. These are navigable streams as well, so why they're in easement and granted to the town is a question. And the other is if they were man-made, and now navigable, can we actually do anything? We might not be able to maintain them. And if we do maintain them, we might not be able to recreate anything, it might just be mowing. So these are all questions that I think we have to ask, maybe some of our regulatory friends.
But on the citizens' comments regarding the design of this cul-de-sac and this water flowing off of the cul-de-sac, you are watching that and
That we
they're
will
meeting
watch,
the
yes.
codes and things like that.
Absolutely.
I think we have to take Mr. Buchholz's comments as a citizen complaint, and it has to be processed as a citizen complaint. You know, and not in a negative way, I'm just saying, if it's separate and aside from the development, whether this was being done or not, it sounds like this is a problem.
Attorney Macy, I have a question. If the drainage easements are dedicated to the town of Waukesha, is the town of Waukesha responsible for the maintenance of those easements, or is it the individual property owner on whose land they go through?
Depends on the wording of the document. And Mr., I hear the engineer politely saying, this does not appear to be the standard form. Normally, even if they come to the community, they're an obligation of the property owner to maintain them, and if they don't, then we can go back and do it and charge them. So the documents, as he said, need to be carefully reviewed, and then the authorities need to be checked with to see what they're gonna allow and they're not going to allow. It's not gonna be an easy project necessarily. That's why I said, I think we start by having Mr. Buchholz, file it as a citizen complaint. Again, not as a negative thing, just to follow our processes, and then start the process of investigating the complaint. I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I mean, if there's a problem, we gotta look at it.
Mr. Buchholz?
Actually, there was a complaint filed several years ago when they started doing the Wood Lily subdivision to the north. I think it's Wood Lily, the one that's in the northwest corner of Oakdale, and they started to bring those waters down in there. Rod Stillwell was still chairman then. It was not an navigable stream at that time. Those ditches were man-made. The agreement to get those ditches and to grant them to the town was done by Mr. Steisen when he put the Oakdale subdivision in. He dug those ditches because they didn't want to put a 6 to 8 foot deep ditch in front of the homes along Lonsdale Road. They went behind them. That's how those got there. And when we made the issue to have that ditch cleaned, then the town approached the county approached the DNR, and they managed to get man-made ditches, navigable streams. That's how that became. And that's why the easements were granted to the town before they became navigable streams, because they did exist and they were man-made. So there was already a complaint filed many, many years ago already, and there hasn't been any action on it since, other than making a navigable stream.
Would it be appropriate, Attorney Macy, for us to direct Engineer Janelli to investigate those easements and find out who is responsible for the maintenance?
You certainly, I don't know if that's appropriate or not appropriate. I'm just worried about how much money's gonna be involved. This is really a town board issue, and that's why I wish it would go through the normal processes of the complaint being filed, the written document, and regardless if a complaint was filed in the past, if there's a new complaint or there's an existing complaint, there is not a complaint being investigated to the best of my knowledge. Does anyone know that a complaint is currently under investigation? So the mere fact that there was complaint about in the past, it isn't getting resolved, so I just like to follow the processes that we have established. And the process is, if we have a complaint, we should file it. The building inspector goes and investigates, he then makes his report to the town board, and the town board decides which professional should get involved in it.
Just to follow on with that all makes good sense to me. Are there really two somewhat interrelated questions here or not? I mean, is one about the issue about the drainage around the cul-de-sac, the runoff from the cul-de-sac, and the bigger issue, or part of it is about these drainage easements, bigger in scope. I mean, I understand they're interrelated, but I mean, is there a way that we, I guess, look at that from two perspectives, and I understand exactly what Attorney Macy is saying, and this has opened up an issue that may be bigger than this, but is there separate consideration that needs to be given to the drainage off of and around the cul-de-sac, even though it may be interrelated?
Absolutely, and that's why I asked the engineer if that's,
Yeah, I think we'll take that comment under consideration when we complete the plan review, construction plan review.
Okay, and that kind of really falls on my original question. This is for certified survey consideration tonight,
Right.
yet just even as it relates to the construction of that cul-de-sac, there will be construction drawings and a subsequent and further review on that.
That is
as it
correct.
drains drainage.
That
Okay,
is correct.
thank you very much.
Any further questions regarding specific to the certified survey map?
I've got one last real quick question, and I'm sure you can explain it. The lot numbering on the certified survey map is different than it is on that conceptual layout for the 10 lots, and I'm assuming there's a good rhyme or reason for that.
I think the conceptual lot layout of the master plan was just an idea of what it might look like, given the density that we've established. So there is no rhyme or reason between the two. The CSM is what's gonna drive it.
Just to clarify the drainage on this cul-de-sac, your intention is eventually here to have water drain off the cul-de-sac into that right-of-way, or the drainage right-of-way, correct?
Well, right now, the drainage goes.
Uphill, right?
Well, the drainage goes north. So how we get it north is really what's easiest and most convenient.
But I mean, that is the goal, there won't be standing water on the
Correct,
cul-de-sac,
yeah,
correct?
nobody wants that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Typically, we would have a master grading plan and a stormwater management plan, and this development is smaller than what we would normally have those documents. And those documents would generally direct us how we would want to see the grading plan occur. In this case, since we don't have those documents, I guess have more freedom is a way to look at it. So we can, as long as the water drains north and we don't have any standing water, we don't have any concerns. So if we can get it to go back west into the proposed culvert, as Dan is looking to do, we can do that. We'll do that. If we can't, well then, we'll have to make arrangements to make sure the water goes north and continues going north, and not ponding.
Is there a motion?
Could the planner walk us through his proposed motion, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
The recommendation for the plan commission tonight is to recommend to the Waukesha board approval of the certified survey map for Mr. Chmielewski. Condition number 1 is that he satisfy all the comments, conditions, and concerns of the town chairman, town engineer, town planner, and all reviewing, objecting, and approving bodies. In condition number 1, it should not read City of Muskego, it should read City of Waukesha, so that is a typo. Number 2 is that the petitioner receives approval of a developer's agreement from the town attorney and town engineer. Condition number 3 is that the petitioner receive approval of a letter of credit from the town attorney and town engineer. Condition number 4 is that he receives approval of deed restriction from the town attorney and town engineer. Condition number 5 is that the address for the new lots are approved by the town fire chief and town building inspector. Number 6 is standard condition of making sure that he receives all appropriate approvals and permits from all reviewing, objecting, and approving bodies. And again, in number 6, it should read City of Waukesha, and that's City of Muskego. Number 7 is that he acquires all signatures on the certified survey map before recording. And number 8 is reimbursement of all costs and expenses.
Questions?
Motion to approve the plan recommendation.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. On to number 6, discussion and possible action on staff report, non-compliance report. These are ongoing issues. They are being addressed by building inspection, our planner, and our attorney. And unless you have any specific questions on any of these, it's an ongoing process. Some of these are quite old. And continue to be worked on. Questions, anybody? Move on, motion for adjournment? Oh, we do have one more. This is an issue that has come before us, I believe, in the past. The inspector had been out and viewed the property. There's quite a number of items that are non-compliant: 6 snowmobiles, 3 to 4 lawnmowers, exterior debris, refuse, junk, unregistered vehicles, decomposing mulch, branches, stumps. Back in Back in May, the building inspector had given him a 30-day notice to comply. There had been a little bit of work done, and it has not been completed. And I believe Mr. Fillinger is here this evening. You want to come on up?
Pardon?
You want to come on up?
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Fillinger is looking for an extension so that he can make necessary repairs and get rid of some of the debris and so forth on the property.
Good evening, my name is Jerry Kukler, I'm an attorney in Waukesha here, and Mr. Fillinger is asking for a brief adjournment to give himself additional time. He indicates that since he received this letter yesterday, the automobile has been removed, the white automobile that's referred. And we are asking that the project continue as previously requested.
How much time are you looking for, Attorney Kukla?
Mr. Fillinger has indicated he needs at least 60 days. Is that correct, Mr. Fillinger?
Longer if possible.
We're talking now about the cleanup of the yard.
Yeah. Painting the buildings and, there's painting in the buildings, plus there's some wood that has to be replaced and everything like that. And if I empty out the doggone shed in order to do if something internally is wrong, I'll have a bigger mess than I got now.
Clerk Salentine, when was the original? Clerk Nicholas, when was the original complaint made?
I'll go for it.
It had to be like the week before, so, the first part of May,
Okay, so this is not one of these that have been hanging out there for years.
no.
What is the pleasure of the Plan Commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we give an extension to the last day of September.
Okay. Second? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. And now, motion for adjournment. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.